Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the development that we've seen in Syria as far as President Bashar al-Assad is concerned and the ramifications of that as far as the region is concerned. The potential for overall, instability in the Middle East. We'll be exploring that. We'll also be talking about the reaction that we've seen all over the world as far as the US is concerned, as far as Russia is concerned, and what is to be expected. Of course, we still don't know whether the plane concerns about the plane crash can confirm the whereabouts of the former President Bashar al-Assad, and we'll be talking about all of this today on Perspective. I have with me today Johar Salim, who's a former Foreign Secretary and President IRS. We have with us Jamil Ahmed Khan, who's a former ambassador, and Adnan Sarwar Khan, who's a foreign affairs expert, Shazia Malik, who's a foreign journalist. We'll be talking about the ramifications of this development as far as the region is concerned. Adnan, can you hear me?
Yes, definitely I can hear you.
We know, we don't know at this time about the whereabouts of President Bashar al-Assad, but this development overall and its ramifications in the Middle East. I know that's very broad, but what do you see immediately now after the rebels and we've seen him fleeing? How do you look at the situation at this time? We also now know the reactions that have come from various parts of the world also.
Yes, right. Thank you very much, Ms. Mahrukh, for this first basic question. In fact, the situation had been quite surprising. It was though expected, but not so suddenly. And now, as far as the Syrian regime is concerned, one thing is clear, that they probably couldn't anticipate this kind of a very fast-track move by the rebels. But having said this, you see, the point also is this, that the rest of the other countries, Turkey in particular, and in particular Turkey, which was backing this HTS, and certain other countries, they were all in some kind of a desire to see the weakening of the Assad regime, and all of them for their own reasons. Israel also on the other hand, and therefore it is said that probably, if one can just term formally even, the main winners appear to be Turkey and Israel. Now the Iranian government on one hand, because Hezbollah got seriously damaged in Lebanon, and the Russian in Ukraine, you see, they are badly involved. So therefore, they wanted to see the retention of the government, particularly the Russian government said that UN Security Council Resolution 2254 of 2015 called for the unity of the Syrian Arab Republic very clearly. So they based their initial stand on this. But it is quite clear that probably they now cannot afford to effectively militarily. Politically, diplomatically, they'll keep on doing, and Iran as well, because Iran also had a serious problem with Israel, and they are now a weakened country. Hezbollah, though, was quite serious enough for the Assad regime, but again, you see, they have claimed that they have sent some 2,000 troops, but those 2,000 troops couldn't fight really, because they had been, have suffered a lot at the hands of Israel in Lebanon. So I think this move of HTS was a very clever strategic move. They saw and noted all these weaknesses of the backers of Assad regime, particularly Russia and Iran. And therefore, they had a quick move. Had this not been the situation, I think Russia and Iran could have forestalled the advance of HTS. But now I think they are going to see some kind of a order, or they wish to see some kind of...
Adnan, in your opinion, do you see a lot of challenges in stabilizing Syria now?
Yes, there are, because it has been said that though you see it is not just Syria alone there in the Middle East as a important country. There are others as well. But instability in Syria is overall instability in the entire region, Middle East. And stability in Syria is the stability, in fact, in much of the Middle East. It had been a key country earlier on against the Israel before it lost Golan Heights. Now you see just that if this kind of a situation persists, and I think one very good thing in all this bad scenario, if one can say from the point of view of Assad's regime and Iran and Russia, is that the rebels taking cover of the incumbent prime minister of Syria has agreed to be represented by this prime minister, because otherwise they are on the terrorist list and the prime minister is not. So they have also said that they are not going to take any kind of revenge either from Russia or Iran, etc. So there's some positivity in it, and they want to build something which could be people's own there in Syria. So if you see better sense prevails, and Iran also has said that they would like to see an inclusive government in Syria.
Right. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Jamil Ahmed Khan on this. Jamil Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly.
There is, I've been talking to Adnan Sarwar, and he's been telling us how this responsibility and the fact that we've seen that there is generally no revenge policy as far as the rebels are concerned, the incumbent prime minister is concerned, and that is some positivity that one can see from what's happened in Syria at this time. And also he said, to use his words, I'm quoting him, he said they want to build their own. Do you agree with this statement? Do you think that perhaps it's a chance for Syria to build on its own terms, and the leadership can then have probably an evolution of a kind, because we've seen this leadership continue now for generations, right?
Well, that's right, but there's something more to that. Basically, everything has to be weighed and analyzed in the backdrop of the geopolitical landscape of the entire world and then the region in particular. Having said so, we have to really see that the rebel group, the opposition fighters, HTS, they have just taken over last 13 years. They've been struggling, but all of a sudden, last 4 or 5 days, they could speed up, and the momentum was so high. There has to be some reason behind it, and one of the reasons could be that they had an enhanced support once Assad regime had the support of Russia and Iran automatically get reduced for Assad regime. Once there was a pressure in Lebanon, Hezbollah potency was diluted, and also Hamas already, what we have seen that the consistent attacks on Hamas has also curtailed its ability to fire. So after decapitating Hamas and Hezbollah, they had to decapitate the Iraqi fighters supporting Assad. And why they did all this? Because this Syria continued to be a pivotal territory, which was connecting the line of communication between Iran and Lebanon. That means a complete supply line to Hezbollah and Hamas. Not only that, there was a complementary support to Russians. The Russians would provide about 11 to 14,000 sorties per month to the troops of Assad military, supported by Hezbollah and Iraqi fighters. So that could only work. The Russian sorties could only work once the ground forces were there. Now, rebels, once they were pampered, boosted by so many neighboring countries after Assad support had gotten receded, then obviously the momentum had to take place. And by then, Israel had a better ingress, better intelligence in Syria. So these are those surrounding circumstances and factors. So after that, now we can visualize, yes, the Syrian, now the rebels are now definitely would try to stabilize Syria.
About Ambassador Jamil, let me come to you. We also have Shazia Malik, and then I'll come back to you. Ji, Shazia, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely, I can hear you.
Shazia, what about the concerns in stabilizing Syria and in terms of the elections now that we are looking for and looking forward to the free elections and the challenges to future governance? How do you perceive that for Syrians at this time?
Yeah. Mahrukh, thank you very much for the opportunity. You know that I have lived for the longest time in Middle East, and I still have a lot of Syrian friends. So when this news came late last night, I called some of them, and there was a huge jubilation over there. They were extremely happy to the extent, can you imagine? I mean, they said that even if now, after this tyrannical rule, Israel takes over, we are going to be very happy. Okay, so I talked to them and I asked them, what if Mr. Jolani now, who definitely was part of Al-Qaeda, and people are very much scared, especially in West where I am, what is going to be? So the Syrian friends told me that Jolani is not going to be, as such an active part of the government. They are going to stabilize for the next 6 months, and then they will hold an election. If you remember, in 2015 also, there was a United Nations Security Council resolution that came, which was 2254, and this is exactly what they said, that this rule needs to end and then there should be free and fair elections. So according to my understanding and the Syrian friends that I have talked to, they said that there is going to be an election in the next 6 months. Now, how the world is reacting to this, for example, I am in Canada. In 2023, people over here, the diaspora, they have been talking to the Trudeau government constantly. And as a result, last year, the Canadian government asked the ICC, that is the International Criminal Court, to, hold an investigation into all this tyranny that this regime was, doing on their subjects. Because you might have heard that they killed something like over 500,000 of their own people. 300,000 were civilians in that. So the Syrians were absolutely, devastated that the world is not doing anything. Definitely, the Turkey and the US has a role.
This move, of course, what's happened internally has come from, these are rebels, and this is, like you said, within Syria, they're extremely happy with this turn of events. And this is, of course, a built-up of, like you said, a resentment of the regime's actions of a number of years.
Yeah. So this one family was ruling for the longest time. First, the father was ruling, and then the son came over, and they had tried to suppress, especially after 2011, after the Arab Spring. People thought that they are going to get democracy in this country, but then this rule started. With tyranny, you cannot rule. I just give you one example of Prime Minister Spencer of England. That was the only British Prime Minister who was killed. And who he was killed by? He was a merchant who murdered him. What happened was that for the longest time, that merchant has been asking for justice. He was caught in Russia. He was put in jail. He came back. He said that he needs justice. Nobody listened to him. He shot the prime minister. He sat there and he said that I have killed him because I went through all the procedures of the law and nobody was listening to me. When the law collapses, when the law collapses, when the justice collapses, then people definitely turn up to arms and they stand up for this thing. So that was the only prime minister.
Let me come back to you. Right, Shazia, yes, we'll talk more about Spencer. Of course, we all know about what happened with him. But let me go to Jamil Saab, and then I'll come back to you. Ambassador Jamil, there are concerns at this time whether they're ill-founded or not, and one hopes that they are, as far as dismantling of Syria, and we know that Syrian buffer zone, we know that Israel's involvement with regard to that, potential involvement. How do you look at that? Do you think that it's a far-fetched possibility, or you think that these are the concerns that perhaps should be looked into?
If we review the entire background of the Middle East, we cannot rule out the possibility that there's a strong possibility of the involvement of Israel, particularly in terms of intelligence collection and intelligence gathering of Syria, because the rebels, they needed some intelligence gathering. As I was mentioning, that Assad regime survived last 10 years, and the rebels could not really succeed despite all these killings, which was being mentioned a little while ago. 500,000 people, a huge number in a population of less than 2.5 million, 25 million people. So yes, it's a very huge number, but at the same time, while that is well noticed by the entire world, the kind of devastation which is taking place in Syria. But then one has to also view it, the benefit, who is the beneficiary of it in terms of geopolitical advantage. So geopolitical advantage and the beneficiary of removing the excess of resistance from the entire region is the major beneficiary is Israel, right? Indeed, there was a fault line in Syria. Indeed, there was a tyranny. Indeed, there was one rule, one family rule for the last 54 years, and out of which 24 years of Bashar al-Assad, and his father ruled the rest of the time. People were persecuted, people were marginalized. That is also true. But then this was the only country which was left to resist of Iran, which was at least not in favor of Israel. And that was giving some its space to Russia, it was giving space to the Iraqi militia fighters who were fighting alongside Syrian army and alongside Hezbollah. So that is gone now. And once that is gone, this conduit which Iran had between Iran, Iraq, and Lebanon, now that is gone. So that means the entire line of communication gone, which means no logistics and no weapon supply to Hezbollah, and equally hardly any supply to Hamas. So that was the aim which has been achieved. The excess of resistance has always been a sore point mentioned by Biden, mentioned by Israeli Prime Minister, and then excess of resistance was Iran, and they wanted to remove it because Iran has lost its capability of engaging Israel horizontally. Now Iran has only one option. Again, it's a dangerous term in the geopolitical scenario of the entire region, that Iran has the only option left for Iran. Iran is vertical capability, means the air capability, the drones and the missiles, which was basically, was the last resort, which Iran has been having. They would first try and use their the proxies, which was in the area. And by the way, the proxies were quite effective in terms of keeping Israel at the arm's length. And also, the U.S. would always think twice before giving its this green signal to Israel or joining Israel in possible neutralization of the Iranian targets, such as the nuclear sites. So now that has become much easier way, and it would not be hard for people like myself to visualize and to analyze that in the coming months and coming days, Iran would find itself in a very tight situation, and the long aspiration of Netanyahu, Israel, supported by the United States, to further weaken Iran by attacking or by other means. Sanctions are already there. The more sanctions.
Let me go to Adnan, Sarwar, and then I will come back to you. Adnan sir, what about, again, as far as Turkey's role, for example, is concerned? even at this time, we are looking at, Turkey-backed forces advancing through northern Syria. Do you think that this also, potentially, as far as the region is concerned, again, the involvement of all these countries and what that can mean for the future? Let's talk about that.
Yes, actually, Turkey's short-term interest might have been fulfilled with the removal of the Kurdish threat. But, in the long run and even in the medium-term range, Turkey needs to understand this, that now the chaotic Syria is not going to be in its favor. And if they continue the same policy of influencing, if they would just like to neutralize...
Now settle down by and large for Syria? Or do you think that, perhaps, we are looking at a further, volatile time for India, for Syria, before it sort of settles down and things can, proceed in the right direction of what the people of Syria want?
Yes, in fact, you see, people at the moment are jubilant, no doubt. But you see, this is how most of our Muslims are. Initially, they are jubilant, but nevertheless, you see, these groups are extremist groups and extremist militant groups. And God forbid if they start dominating the incumbent prime minister and just do not call the shots from behind, but come into the open and delay the elections, and they want to be included in government in a very strong way.
Governance, the process of government and government making should start ASAP, so that legitimacy can resume, and so that things can go back to normal in terms of there being again a normal, a new, whether we call it a new normal or a normal for the people of Syria. But what about again the concerns as far as countries like Israel is concerned?
Israel, has already gained very, very quickly, as is their style, of advancing towards the Golan Heights. They have occupied it. Now, the point is that whether they are likely to go back from Golan Heights buffer zone, I want to say, so quickly. So they have further occupied that neutral buffer zone, and now they would like to have another buffer zone beyond this current buffer zone. So this is their immediate strategic and territorial gain.
Shazia, as far as Russia's strategic interests are concerned at this time, as far as Syria is concerned, do you think that we've seen their alliances within Syria? How do you look at them? Do you think that position may shift now, of course, with the change within Syria and its leadership?
I couldn't hear your question very well, but if I have heard it properly, so you were asking me about the Russian interest in Syria. Is that so?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, first of all, I must, comment on the previous, this comment that came before you came to me, that the splinter groups might, take over. No, there is no such chance over there. The Syrians that I've talked to, they said that HTS, they don't have any base at all. They only have been recruiting the most desperate people over there, and so definitely this opens doors for the people of Syria to go ahead and start their political struggle. And definitely for as far as your question on Russia is concerned, Russia is going to be very concerned because they have had Syria in a very...
So do you think that the people that you've talked to in Syria, let me as a continuation to that, so you think
I talked to them in Dubai. They are in Dubai, so I talked to them, and
so you think that things you see and they perceive things going back to normal in terms of the political process, in terms of the government making and all of that happening very soon in Syria?
like 6 months, like I said in my first comment, that within 6 months, the people of Syria, they want a political struggle, and they want a proper government over there. Definitely, you can understand that HTS, like I just said, that they don't have really any base over here in Syria. So, and then there are Turkey and US and the wider European Union who do not see them as taking over the government and creating problems for them. As far as your question on Russia was concerned, that Russia is going to be very much concerned, because that was a bastion of Russia, and Russia thought that it would be able to keep an eye on the Middle East. But I mean, that is just gone. People of Russia, of Syria, are absolutely sick and tired of all these people, whether they are tyrants or they are influences. However, the American and the European influence is going to seep in, and you will see a democratic system set in, just like I said, within 6 months. So, because the people of Syria are absolutely not with HST.
Ambassador Jamil, you heard, I hope you heard what Shazia is saying, and she says that, the people there expect normalcy to perhaps return in 6 months. Do you think that's a little ambitious, considering that, of course, the leadership within Syria had earlier on been, it's been decades, and there's a footprint, of course, there has to be, of their leadership, and we would have to see a real change seep in through all institutions overall, in terms of the process there, the electoral process of government making, all of that. It could, in your opinion, take how long?
It all depends, because the sectarian fault line would further be widened in this case, because we expect that in Lebanon also, after the kind of actions taken against Hezbollah by Israel and neutralizing its potency, it appears that Hezbollah would not have that much of Lebanese government, which in turn means that Lebanon also would have a Sunni-dominated government. And likewise in Syria, now it seems little clear that the next government in Syria, whether it's 6 months or a little more or less, it all depends what is their constitution, whether how much the election has to be convened. So if they go by that, and if the atmosphere for the election, if they find prevalent, then perhaps they would. They go, because the majority of the people, they are not Alawite, they are not Shiites, so they would definitely like that the government which they choose to be. Not that very many people would understand the complications, that who is the ultimate beneficiary of, yes, at the local level, people would be benefited by the democracy and the real democracy, and the kind of oppression and the kind of persecution which Assad regime had, like in Libya, that is gone, like in Iraq during the dictator's regime. So that is gone. But at the same time, the actual beneficiary, as I was mentioning earlier, also is Israel in a larger geopolitical landscape. And the biggest loser in this entire episode is Iran so far. And Iran being the biggest loser becomes more dangerous, by the way. So where Russia is concerned, Russia not only strategic interest, but Russia, after 25 years, had its presence in the Mediterranean Sea through its
Right, let me come back to Ambassador. Let me go to Adnan sir. Adnan sir, there, as far as Middle East is concerned, unfortunately, there have been other times when there has been hope for there to be perhaps a more stable Middle East. Whether we talk about Arab Spring, for example, the Iraq war also, but of course the interest as far as Israel is concerned overall has always been that the more unstable overall Middle East is, the more it suits them. Do you think that those realities are beginning to, or perhaps can change now?
Yes, I think that your concern is quite valid in terms of your question. And Israel indeed would see a very central country like Syria to be a little unstable and not at all stable. They would not like to see anything of a real stability in the overall Middle East, and particularly in a country like Syria, which had been much more stronger than Lebanon, and they have a history of fighting with Israel directly 2-3 times in the past. So this, therefore, I don't think, and I also think that if that kind of a democracy emerges there, welcomingly, which is a little neutral and is not pro-American, pro-West, pro-Israel, then the Western world at large would not accept it wholeheartedly. You have the example of Mohammed Morsi in Egypt, It was on the basis of election. But what happened to him when he tried to be a little independent than the rest of the other regimes? So this was a very, very draconic kind of end for him, very unfortunately. Now here you see, I think that if only, and this is my going to be punch sentence, that if the people's jubilation and hopes and you see the expectations are honored by HTS and the rest of the other Islamic militant organizations which were working against Assad, by fostering a good balanced democracy, that would be the only hope. And then only they can be always called as the hero of Syrian people. Otherwise, if they don't go by that and have an authoritarian regime again of their own style, or that would be something, a great disappointment to these joyful people of Syria today. So I think the HTS and the rest of the others must respect the people's verdict and people's expectation.
Right. Let me go to Shazia. Shazia, what about the role of overall the Muslim community, the OIC, with regard to, perhaps stabilizing whatever that can be done to stabilize the region overall?
To see a stable government over here. If you have heard Prime Minister Jalali, he has already said, Prime Minister Jalali, he has already said that he will do whatever it takes to bring about, stability in the country, and he's going to sit with even HTS and see that a national government is a bit, because a coalition government will not work in this country, because they did this experiment in Tunisia and didn't work. Now for the Arab world, the OIC that you are asking, I mean, of course, this is going to be another democracy in the region. Israel has been saying this for the longest time, that we are the only democracy in Middle East. Now, this, if the people's power comes and they set up the government, this is going to be. So I think the other Arab countries are going to be a little afraid. But then again, the influence of US and the EU and the wider world is going to be bigger. But if a stable government comes, I think the Arab world also is going to stand with them and support them, because they know the kind of oppression and suppression they have, the Syrians have suffered for the longest time now.
Israel involvement is something to be feared at this time, or watched out for, certainly.
Sorry?
But you believe, of course, that the Israel's involvement in destabilizing the region in any way further is something to be watched out for at this time.
Absolutely. You should be absolutely be playing on your, on front pitch and on your front foot. You should be very, very ready if they want to, increase their, influence more further in the region. So the Arabs are going to be very cautious about it.
Right, fair enough. Let me go to Ambassador Jamil. Ambassador Jamil, in terms of the situation within Syria, in terms of their borders at this time, where of course we know Israel is something that they must be watching for, and like Shazia, Shazia also mentioned quite clearly that it's something that we all know is a potential threat, and of course instability in the region suits them the most. Syria stabilizes, best case scenario. What do you see as the ripple effect? Let's talk about something positive.
Syria stabilizes, and if they toe the line of the rest of the Gulf countries and rest of the neighboring countries of Israel, they are okay, they are happy, because then Syria and Syrian government would start living with the terms and condition which is dictated by the Israel as being done by the other neighboring countries of Israel. So they to that extent it's okay, and so long as the Sunni dominated the possible government, the future government does not really give any ingress to Iran, and do not let their territory be used as a conduit for supplying the logistics and other arms and ammunition to the Libyan Hezbollah. Hezbollah is an ideology. It's not going to completely wither away. It's going to stay there. But for now, they are a little weak. They have been made weak. Fine enough. The Hezbollah, again, is an ideology. So that's also going to exist there. But then, for how long they would again gain the strength to show
stability as far as Syria is concerned can in whatever way or form perhaps weaken Israel, even if very little, or there's hope there, or no, it's too far-fetched?
Stability, as I said, can only be a threat to Israel if they start claiming their Golan Heights once again, which is enunciated in the Security Council resolution, that all the lands captured by Israel in 1967 should be returned back to those countries. And obviously, Israel is not going to do that. Rather, it has further expanded in Gaza. It has further expanded in West Bank. So they would rather like to encroach some more land from the Syria rather than returning it back to them. So if that be the case, and if Syrians, as I said, they live like other neighboring countries like Oman, Egypt has already entered into an agreement with the Nova War Pact with Israel. Lebanon has been neutralized, and now the future government may not be able to resist, except Hezbollah has been mellowed down to a greater extent for some time. So things are going in favor of Israel, and Israel, I don't think, would feel threatened unless Iran is able to have an ingress. Once there is a Sunni-dominated government, probably Iran would find.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your very valuable input, Ambassador Jamil Ahmed Khan. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for joining us today. Shazia Malik, thank you for being with us today. Dr. Adnan Sarwar Khan, thank you for your very valuable input. Overall, of course, one hopes that this will lead to stability in the region. One hopes that it will lead to the hopes of those people of Syria being fulfilled, and a free state, and the process of government making and stability returns to the region as far as Syria itself is concerned domestically as soon as possible. Of course, we are talking about figures like perhaps 6 months. One hopes that it happens within that time and that it has a ripple effect overall. Of course, we all want to see, the Islamic world wants to see stability in the Middle East, and let's hope that we can move towards that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.